Hey, it's Greg Hensley with Stone Edge Surfaces, and what we're going to do for you today is we're going to throw a little concrete on the wall and show you how to quickly be able to stamp and carve out depictions of stone without having to get real extravagant and making yourself feel like you got to be an artist or anything of that magnitude. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and apply the material on the wall. You can refer to some of our Stone Edge videos for more of the application process. But right now I'm going to put a base coat, I'm going to put a bond coat, and I'm going to put a final coat to be stamped. Okay, so the coat that we're putting on right now is basically our bond layer. It's an anchor layer, so that our top coat that we're going to put on will just hold nice and light onto this, so that we can put a much thicker secondary layer when we're putting our mix on. So when you put it on, you want to put it fairly tight. You may see a little bit of the ribs from the scratch coat, and that's okay. I just don't want to put it so tight that there's nothing there except for what's in the crevices of the scratch coat. There needs to be a tiny bit of body there to be able to hold on to your secondary layer, which is your top coat, to be stamped. So once I get this finished out, then I'll put the lighter layer on at a much heavier thickness to be stamped at that point. So now that I have my anchor layer on there, which is nice and tight to the scratch coat, I'm going to allow myself to put a second coat on here, which will be a lot more material than I have on my actual hawk and trowel. And again, I'm not using this as a troweling mechanism. I'm using it as an applicator. So I basically just want to get my material on there in the thickness that I want it, and then leave it alone. Okay. As I'm putting this material on, you see I'm using a hawk and trowel method. Feel free to use your own bare hands with gloves, and you can use a method that a lot of people call hand bombing. Basically, you're just throwing the mud on the wall in increments, stay in your lanes, and then you can still hit it with a pool trowel. Now, for your base layer, you still want to make sure, even if you're throwing it by hand, that you trowel that first layer and anchor it into the actual scratch coat before you put your second layer on there. Now that, we're going to throw a little bit. All I'm trying to do is stay in my lanes so that when I'm done throwing a pass, I can hit it with my pool trowel. Are you going to throw thousands of square feet? You are not. I'll do 2 lanes of this and I'll get back to troweling. But if you're doing smaller jobs, fireplaces, small retaining walls, anybody can throw mix. There's nothing to it. And it hangs right there. So don't be afraid to get your hands dirty, as they say. And that's it for that. Before I continue on troweling, I'm going to grab a pool trowel, show you how to finish that off. Hey, it's Greg Hensley with Stone Edge Surfaces again. We're still putting up our pro wall mix. I've grabbed the pool trowel because I want you to see what it's like when we actually, someone gets out of the way when they're applying, someone can follow right behind them and hit it with a pool trowel. Look how that material smooths right off. And that's all we're trying to do.
Does it matter which way you trowel?
It does. We never want to trowel down. So you can trowel up or to the side, okay? And don't feel like you got to get every little tiny blemish out, because the stamping is going to take care of that. But the reason why we don't want to go down, because we don't want to pull the material off the wall. Another method is also using a type of mortar sprayer and a compressor. Just make sure you have enough compressed air, usually about 8.5 SCFM and about 100 PSI, to shoot the material through about 3/4 to 1 inch orifice holes through the actual mortar sprayer, and that will allow you to put your material on the wall very efficient as well. Now, keep in mind, when you're putting this material on the wall, as you see, I've done an anchor coat and I've done my secondary coat, which is much thicker. If I continually put a layer after layer after layer, and I'm not talking about 3/4 of an inch at a time, I'm talking about maybe 1/4 of an inch at a time, I'm going to make that surface area much more dense than it would be by putting one thicker, lighter, fluffy layer to be stamped on there. So some people at times think they're putting the right amount on, and they are, but they're densifying it because each time they hit it with a trowel, they're tightening it, they're tightening it, they're tightening it. We want to make sure it's nice and light to the wall so our stamp will recess in nice and easily. Okay, so make sure you're doing that as well. Also, make sure when you're troweling these nice thick layers that you're not troweling down on the material. We don't want gravity to work against us. We want it to be able to just lay up there nicely so you can go up or to the side, but never down when you're applying the material. Thank you. Okay, so we have basically done our anchor coat, we've done our top coat of full thickness for what we have desired we need for the depiction of stamping that we're going to create on this surface. So before I do any stamping, I want to make sure that I have a fairly smooth surface. As you see, I've haphazardly put this material on the wall, but I've kind of let it stay at a very similar contour all the way through. So now I'm going to take a pool trowel instead of an actual concrete trowel that I've been applying the material with, and I'm going to smooth the actual material out for stamping. As you can see, I'm just doing a nice long stroke, closing up all of the pores, just so it fairly has a smooth surface so that the stamp can get all of the texture possible from the actual depiction or the grain that you're creating. Once you get most of it, don't continue to go over and over with the pool trowel, because now all I have is little small areas that I need to work with. And remember, you have tape below and beyond what you're actually doing that you're going to take away, so you have a nice clean edge for your stone that you're creating. So you'll be getting rid of this a little bit later, beyond the poly, the plastic, the tape down, weather stripping, whatever you may have. It's letting you have your nice edge to work with. Right now, I'm just trying to close it up so I can go ahead and do my stamping process. But now that I've done most of my long strokes with the pool trowel, I can close most up with just the end. So I can just lightly go on there, close up whatever I need to, and then move on. Now the really great thing about this type of product is it's ready to stamp. That's the great thing about stone edge surfaces material, is once you get it up on the wall, it's pretty much ready to go. So we're going to grab our stamps, grab our release agent, and go ahead and create the depiction of the actual stamps that we'd like to create, so we can come back and hand carve this surface in a manner by which we're creating a concrete stone look, a flagstone, a random stone, a castle rock. You can do dry stacks by hand. Don't overthink it. You're going to have a lot of people out there try to tell you that you really have to be an artisan and you really have to have that capability behind your being able to create this type of look. And that's not true at all. When it comes to painting, I'm the type that still draws stick people, but I can look at a photo from a magazine, I can take a depiction of that stone and just create it on the surface, and we'll talk about a little bit about that here in a minute. Hey, it's Greg Hensley with Stone Edge Surfaces, and today we've applied some concrete wall mix to be stamped to create a stone depiction. I have Nick Grog here with me, brand new to the company, has never actually touched this material or stamps before. We're going to be using our wall texture skin set of 3, and as you see, we offer a few other type of wall skins that you can buy as a set or you can buy individually as well. But today I'm going to show Nick here how we've already got the material on the wall, but we don't want to just put our stamp right onto the wall dry because it'll stick a little bit possibly and pull the material off the wall. So the first thing we want to do is use a bubblegum type liquid release agent. Spray the surface down and also spray your stamps. All you're doing is a fine misting. You don't have to oversaturate. Just make sure you get all of the areas. Set that off to the side. We'll pick it up. As you notice, our stamps have 2 handles in the back of them. Okay? When you put your stamp in the air, when you hold it in the air and you take one hand off, what happens is you get a little bit of weight. Okay? Not as much represented with the regular skins as it does with the dry stacks. But I'm going to have Nick just start to begin to walk up, put his stamp anywhere he wants, stamp aside, nice and easy. Put the hand in the other handle, and then stamp it nice and easy, and pull it off. Don't have to stamp real hard at all, just nice and easy. The biggest thing is keeping it in one spot. All right, you pull it off nicely. Boom. All right. Okay, so we've begun our stamping process with our actual wall texture skins. So I'm going to have Nick come again here, and every once in a while you'll do a little bit. We have a small area, so if there's 2 guys stamping, you may do a little bit in your area and then switch sides to get a little bit of the different stamps that you have. And you can basically go anywhere. And I notice when he puts his hands on the stamps, okay, you want to keep one hand in one of the handles at all time. And if you feel like it's coming down with a little bit of weight, always put your hand in there and give a little bit of a torque to it, so that you can keep it in one spot and you can be able to stamp the texture that you want. Once I stamp that texture, I can switch hands, torque it a little bit, and boom, create the texture. Pinch it together, make it a little bit of concave so it doesn't create a suction, and just pull it away from yourself. But you can imagine having retaining walls and be able to really quickly put mix up and create texture along a elongated surface with some square footage that might be a flood wall, retaining wall with a cap, the lower part of a home where usually they might just have an unfinished foundation. Something like that you can really beautify by putting a lot of texture on there. And so Nick, you can continue on if you want to switch stamps or whichever. I tell you what, we'll hold it and let him, John. Nice and easy all the way to the bottom. Very nice, Nick. All right, so I'll go in the middle. I'll have him possibly come down here. Now, we have a small area and I probably don't need to, but just say we need a little bit of extra release agent because we've gone for maybe 10-15 minutes. Then you can back off for a second. No, if you've already sprayed the wall surface, there's really no need to respray that. But maybe you just need to respray your wall texture skin just a little bit with a misting of product so that it won't stick. Okay, I'm gonna wait till he comes off because he's covered mine just a hair. And there doesn't have to be texture on every surface ounce of each stone. So don't feel like you gotta continually get over and over and over and over. Now, if you look here, you'll see a little bit of a stronger indentation into the surface. Now, all that is a little bit of harder pressing on the actual stamp, and you get more of an outline of the actual outside of the stamp. And that can be okay, especially when you're hand carving. Just be aware of it so that if you just want more of a shallow texture, then maybe stay away from the very edge of your stamp and maybe stamp just a little bit lighter. All right, guys. Greg Hensley with Stone Edge Surfaces. We've stamped for the most part this wall mix to be carved at a later time, not much later. We can probably wait another 15 minutes or we can wait another 3 or 4 hours. It really doesn't matter. It just depends on how clean you want your grout joints to be and maybe how used to carving you may be. If you're new at carving, you probably want to wait a little bit longer until you get used to how the material comes off when using our particular tools, the hand cutting tools that we use. But I just wanted to point out a couple of things. When you're stamping with wall mix, sometimes less is more. One being the amount of material that you use. We probably have a little bit more material than we actually need on this particular project, but we mixed up 2 bags for this particular 16 square foot section, and we went ahead and filled it up. So we'll get some nice bulbous stones when we hand carve. It'll be a really nice look. But if you don't want to have that much of a drastic 3D effect and you want some more shallow stone, just a nice, easy depiction, then maybe not press quite as hard on your actual stamps when you're pressing on the outside of the actual skin. So if I'm holding this skin up here, and this looks like the one here, if I press really hard around the edges, then I'm gonna get the depiction of the actual full perimeter of the stone. And you may not want that. Another thing that can happen is if you don't press straight in and straight out, maybe you go at it down here and you're kind of moving upward or down or to the side, you can separate the material just a little bit. And it might give you the appearance of a shrinkage crack or something like that, but it's really not. You've actually pulled the material away from itself because you kind of slid. So just remember, when you're stamping, straight in, straight out, you don't have to press real hard. That is when we're using our dry stack stamps, and we want that configuration of the grout joints to recess down into the mud, and then the rest of the mud concaves back into the cavity of the actual field stone or dry stack, and that gives the illusion of being much thicker. This is a little bit different. We're gonna come back and we're gonna hand carve the actual material to create our own depiction, so it can be shallow or a little bit deeper fill, and you choose how much material that you want to put on the wall. You can get away with about a ½ inch of material with these wall skins that we use. I put about 1 inch of material so that I can get a little bit more of a concave, bulbous, a little bit more of a drastic look. But if you just have 1,000 square foot foundation wall, flood wall, or retaining wall, and you want to be quick about it, then go ahead and throw your scratch coat up there same day, and go ahead and throw your wall mix up 1/2 inch and go right behind it and start texturing it out. And then later on today, I'm gonna teach you how to hand carve some realistic looking stone. Hey guys, Greg Hensley with Stone Edge Surfaces, and today we've applied some wall mix concrete material to be able to hand carve to create a depiction of natural stone. And there's basic tools that you need to do that. You might need a carbide cutting tool that you would use for cutting tile, that we may use for sharpening and cutting in edges. We have our concrete cutting tool to create joints. In between the actual stone and get our pattern first, and then we'll open up after the fact. And we have just a regular old chip brush that we'll use to soften up our grout joints, expose the sands, and get a more natural look. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to kind of border your project and clean up around the edges from where you might have tape around. So I'm just going to kind of clean that off, cut through it, get to the edge from where my plastic or the tape might be. All of anything residue beyond that will probably be pulled away when the actual tape is pulled from the plastic for whatever protection and masking that you use to mask off your project. Hey, Greg Hensley from Stone Edge Surfaces. We've just got finished bordering this particular project. Kind of haphazardly, just got it to the point where now we can get our pattern and depiction of stones. This particular material's been laying on the wall about 3.5 hours. We could have started carving about 30 minutes after we actually laid the material. You just have a little bit different approach to it of kind of how timid you may have to be versus as you wait a little bit longer, as it gets firmer, you can kind of go a little bit faster. You can carve a little bit harder and be a little bit more aggressive. You don't have to worry about material falling off the wall or cutting a little further into something that you don't really want to, but it really doesn't matter because there are no perfect stones and you can always create a realistic looking stone using the stone edge vertical wall mix. One great thing to do, guys, is just take a photo of any stone that you like. If you're really apprehensive of being an artistic type person, from which you don't have to be to create this type of stone, is you can take a photograph and just kind of look at it and say, okay, well, I think, I'm looking at it, maybe I want a stone right up in here, just like the one up in the corner there, and then I've come right off here, just like the one up at the top, and just follow that along, okay? Don't feel like you have to just look at yourself, because some guys that are new at this will stare at it for 30 minutes trying to figure out where to put the next line, and it's not about that. Just create the stones as you see fit fairly quickly. Try to kind of stay away from four-way intersections. Four-way intersections just have a tendency to stand out when someone is actually carving. So what we'll do first is we'll use something similar. We'll go ahead and create our pattern first. We'll let you see the pattern, which will look pretty ugly at that point. And then we'll come back and open up the actual grout joints and make it look a little bit more like realistic stone. So we'll see you in a minute. All we're doing now is creating a little bit of our stone look. I'm really not thinking about where I'm putting my actual stone. I'm just coming through, creating, putting lines in. I may have a four-sided stone, I may have a three-sided stone, I may have squares. But as long as I don't have, like I said, a bunch of four-way intersections, I can create a lot of realistic looking stones. And first you're going to have your pattern, which is going to make all of the stones look fairly narrow and when you're actually applying it. But then we're going to open those grout joints up to more of a three-finger intersection, a little bit jagged edges. That's going to make the stones look a little bit more realistic appearance. So I'm going to continue on. We're actually going to pull gentleman Nick Grogg into the feature here and let him carve a little bit of the actual stone himself. And so if Nick was to walk up on this and he's never done it before, he may walk up and come from this section right here and maybe come a little bit further here and cut up into that stone right there. Maybe not bring it all the way for such a larger stone. So the biggest thing is when Nick comes in, if you hold your carving tool out like this and dig deep, you're going to have a much deeper grout joint than if you come in and shallow, okay, come across the actual material shallow. You'll just expose the grains of the sand, and then we'll be able to create our stones. Hey Nick, so go ahead, this is your first time, kind of carve along there, nice and shallow, and then come across, nice and shallow right there. Finish that line off, right about from there to there, nice and shallow. So what Nick's doing, if you notice, when I'm carving, I'm being a lot less aggressive. So I'm just skimming the top off of the surface, I'm not digging deep. When he's doing his, he's coming a little bit deeper, creating a little bit more of a 3D effect with his stone. Neither I'm right or neither he's right or wrong or vice versa. It is according to the customer what they may want. They may want a little bit of a deeper grout joint. We may have both on this. When I open the grout joints up, you'll get a little bit deeper anyway. But if you start off shallow, you can always work your way deeper. Just be careful of going a little bit too deep sometimes when you first begin. So now maybe you can come across this line here and create something down into there. Nice and shallow. There you go. And then there you go. Boom. Like that. So maybe you want to bring this intersection off somewhere down. Boom. And then you want to come off of that corner and come over a little bit somewhere. I like it. And so therefore I just saw what you're getting ready to do. Perfect. And I think that there's a little bit, some bigger stones here. So what you can do before you decide to make a bunch of smaller stones is maybe go ahead and open up your pattern a little bit to see what you have first before you decide to make some of the smaller stones. So now we'll begin to open up the actual surface area to get a little bit bigger grout joints, three-finger intersections to get a more realistic looking stone effect to the actual project. Now, you notice when I'm carving and I'm opening them up, I'm creating some of that 3D effect that Nick was creating down here, and that's okay as well. So the biggest thing is don't go at it perfectly straight. You want to have some jagged edges. You want it to feel like it has a natural stone appearance. And no two stones are perfectly mortared together unless you're doing a dry stack. If you're doing a dry stack, then I want that configuration to be right on top of each other. And I would be using a different type of tool, whether it's a carbide cutter or I'm squeezing my joint cutting tool together really tight to create that nice tight grout joint by which they're stacked on top of each other. If I want this appearance, this is the type of appearance where when you're standing 40, 50 feet away and it's already colored, I can tell that the stones are a little bit separated and they have a particular colored grout joint. If I want a dry stack, then I'm going to do them narrow and I'm going to make sure that my grout joints are accentuated with a dark color so that they stand out as a dry stack and have that dark, shadowy black configuration in between the actual stones. So again, we're just continuing on, opening up the grout joints, just enough to get a realistic appearance. In a second here, I'm going to have Nick come in again and do some of the bottom area. But you can see how it gets some of those edges of the actual stone and it gives it that realistic appearance look. Don't feel like you got to go at it slow. Just start carving away and let it create what it's going to create. Because if you stand over it for 30, 40 minutes trying to figure out, well, which stone do I want to carve next, you're never going to get it carved. And we've talked about this a million times. I'm not an artist. I've never claimed to be an artist. Don't want to be an artist. I want to get in and I want to create these type of depictions quickly so that the contractor can make money with their customers, be able to get in and out, do retaining walls, flood walls, bottom of the foundations of homes. Whether it's an interior fireplace, backsplash, shower surround, you can create this in a fraction of the time and labor cost of what you'd have to do with a real stone or a cultured stone or a manufactured stone to be able to lathe up on the wall, lick and stick up on the wall. We can do this all in one swoop. We can put the material up on the wall, we can stamp it out, we can begin our carving process all in the same day. And a lot of times finish up that particular project before we even go to the next day. So you can pick up a check and they're just amazed at how quickly that you've created particular stone. Okay, Nick, come on in. So you see how I'm kind of coming in haphazard, just hold it nice and firm, kind of close to the surface area. And then just kind of pull it and go back and forth. And you want to get in the intersections where they meet. You want to kind of open it up a little bit, not necessarily round them off, but if you want all your stones rounded off, then it's absolutely okay to do that. Just decide beforehand whether you want a flagstone type appearance or a random stone with rounded edges type appearance. That's more of your customer's suggestion there. Now I noticed that Nick, just because he's never done it before, he's being a little bit timid. He's probably worried about taking too much material off, and I respect that because he doesn't want to mess the project up. We're putting this on film and on YouTube, but he can go a little faster as he gets a little bit more used to the material. So I'll just get back in there to what he's done, and I'll just start carving out. I noticed down here where he had a little bit of a hump material, guess what? I'm just going to take that out. I'm going to make that stone look like it's actually sticking out and has a lot more of a appearance of 3D effect right there. Same thing with that other one, and then I'll come in hard on that one. Open this grout joint up just a little bit. Open that one up just a little bit. One of the main reasons why I want to be smoother to the surface when I'm carving, even if I'm going to be doing a 3D effect, is because I would like to get that sharp edge around the actual stone so that it actually has the look of a 3D appearance of the flagstone sticking out further than the actual grout joint. So once I've carved, and I don't know if this is perfect. What do you think? What do you think there, Nick? See anything that needs to be carved? I see one.
This little edge right here?
That little edge, I think is the one you did.
Yeah.
I think it looks awesome. Okay? I think it's something that if you didn't want to have to worry about it and you want to take it out, you didn't have to. If you want to come around the edge and soften it just a hair and maybe just take that little point off, that's really all you need to do. Now, this one's a little narrow. Who's to say that it didn't need to stay narrow, but we can open it up and just get the grout joint even to it. But now, when you're close up on it, does it look like the stones are fairly far apart? It may. But when you stand 10 to 20 feet back, and you continue to go back further and further, the stones get closer and closer together, okay? So remember that when you're carving, and you're exposing the sands and whatnot. So now it's time to just go in, I'll just clean up any residual that I have. So once we've kind of carved out and we've opened up our grout joints, maybe we want to expose the sands and soften them up a little bit. This also depends on the stage that you're on it at. If you get on it fairly early, using a chip brush will expose the sands a little bit more like you did carve it late, a little bit cleaner look. We are carving it later, about 3.5 hours later. I'm still gonna hit it with a chip brush just to kind of soften up. See how just by hitting that surface area, it kind of lightens up the sands? It kind of softens them up, smooths them out, and gives a much more smoother appearance to the actual mortar joint. It makes it look a little bit more realistic and soft. And it also softens the edge of the stone. Something like this, if you see that little mark right there, what that probably is that's probably a little bit of a liquid release mark that'll be taken out when we actually do our coloring process. Won't hinder us at all. But one of the main things I really like to do is I do like to chase all of my grout joints with a chip brush just to get them nice and smooth. I think it adds to the appearance. It softens up the look of the entire stone. It's very quick and easy to just have someone run over top of and smooth them out. But if you notice, just because it's open poured, it's the same mix, but can you tell a huge difference in the color of the surface of the stones versus the color of the grout joints? Absolutely, because one's open poured, one is not. Okay, that's what helps us have already a differentiation in color. There's guys out there that I see all the time that never put 1 ounce of color on any of the stones. They just carve it, call it a day. I'm not asking you to do that. I love using Stone Edge Surfaces liquid colors and creating all types of colorations and multitones to all these different stones, but it still looks very realistic as it stands right now. Alright, so we got a pattern.
Use a pull trowel with the stone makers.
And we will use the pool trowel to get in there and clean them out when we're ready. Let's see how that closes up right there. And then we can get back in there and restamp those. We're going to restamp those. So if you want, get the handle ones, these small handles, put release, and then as I'm doing this, you can get in there and actually do, first I'm going to get all these edges cut, and then we're going to come back and open up some of these grout joints.
Oh, yeah.
These little yellow hands.
Okay.
Those guys, yeah.
Those cool.
Because you can come in on that angle.
Gotcha, gotcha.
I've taken a beige, like a dark cypress, have a little bit in there. I didn't put anything with that. Took persimmon, put a little bit of charcoal with that. And then I have a charcoal so that we can do our lines and grout joints to get a differentiation. We may do the same things on these stones right here. We may differentiate it. We may do something when we do that with that. But right now we're just concentrating on these. So I've got the spray pattern very similar to the way we do when we let it mist on these surfaces. And I usually like to use the darker ones first, or the more drastic ones. So you come in, and you can go over what you've done. You don't have to just stick with a particular color or whatnot, but you can two-tone them, you can get different variations. Actually, I like that color as the base. And then we'll come back to secondary color now. This is dogwood and persimmon.
Yeah.
This is a darker charcoal that I'm using to blend all of the grout joints together.
So you actually you enhancing the ground joints with
I
that
am.
too?
Grid shadow.
Small.
There's more definition to the stripe.
Then I can use my sponge very, very, very lightly to kind of blend anything.
Yeah, that was like a run up there, but how you handle that?
And even that wouldn't really show up. But the biggest key is to utilize your sponge to a point. But you want those darker looks in your crevices. Look, we can leave it. It's going to dissipate away. You can hit it. It's just like it don't
Make it feel better, we'll go ahead and fix it.
Everywhere you spray to get dark into those ridges, make sure you blend it just a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's
You
great.
see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And you differentiate it and you get all those different
The other colors, it's enhancing your other colors and blending in together.
That's exactly right. And you can do what I'm doing. You can do it too much and you'll wipe everything away.
Yeah, yeah. No,
When I first started doing this, like, oh, let me wipe a little bit more here. So right now, all I'm looking for is maybe in an area where I had a little bit of dark in the crevices. But look how much more depth it has now.
It looks great.
And this just lightens everything up. You go around your edges.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
And remember guys, less is more. So don't kill yourself trying to get every little nook and cranny.